Now, the White House is in a lot of trouble for a number of different scandals, but I think the most egregious one is how they have attacked the press. In fact, this has been going on for quite a while. Glenn Greenwald wrote about this back when the government was apparently targeting Julian Assange over the Wikileaks leaks. Now, Glenn stated at the time, quote, "Very rarely do investigative journalists merely act as passive recipients of classified information. Secret government programs aren't typically reported because leaks just suddenly show up one day in the email box of a passive reporter. Journalists virtually always take affirmative steps to encourage its dissemination. They try to cajole leakers to turn over documents to verify their claims and to consent to their publication." So what he's saying there is the unique theory that the Obama administration was using against Julian Assange was, well, this guy was an active participant. He wouldn't have gotten that classified information if he hadn't cajoled the leaker into doing it, so he is a co-conspirator. Now, at the time, Glenn pointed out, now wait a minute, if Julian Assange is a co-conspirator, as I just showed you in the quote that I read, almost every investigative journalist has some contact with the leaker, cajoles him in some ways, assuages him that his identity is not going to be revealed, etc., and is an active participant in breaking that story. And at the time, Glenn warned, quote, "In some, investigative journalists routinely, really by definition, do exactly that which the DOJ's new theory would seek to prove Wikileaks did. To indict someone as a criminal conspirator in a leak on the ground that they took steps to encourage the disclosures would be to criminalize investigative journalism every bit as much as charging Assange with espionage for publishing classified information." Now you have to understand, no administration has ever done this, where they take a reporter and say, just for publishing the information, we're not only going to punish the leaker, but we're going to punish the reporter. It's unprecedented. In fact, Nixon considered doing it to a New York Times reporter during the Pentagon Papers. But even the thugs that worked under Nixon were like, whoa, that's a bridge too far. Now, the administration was considering that for Assange. Now, did the rest of the press stick up for them? Generally speaking, hell no. Now, Glenn Greenwald pointed this out, but he wasn't alone. Interestingly, James Goodale, who was a former New York Times counsel during the Pentagon Papers. Now, here's a guy who's seen it before. Said, quote, "The biggest challenge to the press today is the threatened prosecution of WikiLeaks, and it's absolutely frightening." But did the rest of the press pay attention at that time? No. Did they support Assange? No. And what has come to bear now? Well, the chickens have come home to roost. And now they are targeting American journalists. And one of those works at Fox News Channel. So all of a sudden, the right wing, conservatives, Fox News, Republicans, a little concerned. Wait a minute. We didn't think you were going to spy in on us. We didn't think that you would call us criminals. Well, guess what? That's exactly what they did. In fact, for a story that he broke about North Korea, James Rosen was targeted. He was talking to a State Department official, Stephen Kim. They found this out partly by intruding into his private correspondences, the reporters. And Stephen Kim now faces up to 10 years in prison. By the way, important note, Stephen Kim did not release any classified information, nothing that was top secret. I don't even know what they're trying him on. He did not reveal secret information. They're just trying him for leaks. Oh, how dare you! And he didn't give it to the enemy, he gave it to a reporter. This is only what's been happening in journalism for time immemorial. If you do this to Kim, you say to any government whistleblower, we don't care if you broke the law, we don't care if it was secret information, we're going to prosecute you anyway. But now, more importantly, you say to all the reporters, if you actually do your job, you do investigative journalism, we're coming for you. So what did they do to James Rosen? They tracked his movements in and out of the State Department. They traced the timing of his calls. They obtained a search warrant to read 2 days' worth of his emails. They read all of his emails with Stephen Kim. They even tracked his parents' calls. They seized records from 5 numbers used by Fox News and 2 White House lines. Now, it's interesting because this is the one piece of journalism Fox News has done, and then they go after him for this. I mean, you can criticize Fox News for 100 different things, but not this story. This is the story where they're actually doing journalism, and they broke a story about North Korea and how they might test more nuclear weapons depending on what our government did. That is as legitimate a news story as it gets, but it doesn't matter. According to the Washington Post, FBI agent Reyes wrote that there was evidence that Rosen had broken the law, at the very least, either as an aider, abettor, and or co-conspirator. Now you have to understand why that is so incredibly dangerous. If a journalist is a co-conspirator for simply receiving a story about our government, that means we can't find out anything about our government that the government doesn't want, because they will label the act of journalism criminality, that it is a co-conspiracy, that he is aiding and abetting. That is the basis by which they got the warrant to go through his emails and his calls. Of course, understandably, Fox News is now horrified. Here's Brett Baer.
We have the documents now, and the seized toll records relate to James' parents' home in Staten Island.
It's unbelievable.
And it is unbelievable. They targeted his parents' home in Staten Island. What is this? This is Big Brother looking in on us. And of course, Glenn Greenwald once again comes back around, and I mean, he's got every right in the world to say I told you so, but he doesn't put it that way. He says this newfound theory of the Obama DOJ that journalists can be guilty of crimes for soliciting the disclosure of classified information is a means for circumventing those safeguards and criminalizing the act of investigative journalism itself. That's 100% right. If you're not worried about that, then you don't understand our Constitution and the freedom of the press, and you don't understand the great abuses that this Obama administration has done. Yes, the Bush administration opened the door in a lot of ways, but Bush never went this far against journalists. And remember, Obama has already doubled the number of Espionage Act prosecutions for leakers. And a lot of those leakers were whistleblowers who blew the whistle on the government for either overspending and violating our privacy at the NSA or doing the torture programs at the CIA. The people who did the torture were free to go. The people who whistle blew on the torture were arrested. That's not under Bush. That's under Obama. Obama's taking it to a whole new level. Now the rest of the press is finally waking up. Eli Lake at the Daily Beast says, this is a serious idea. Instead of calling it Obama's war on whistleblowers, let's just call it what it is, Obama's war on journalism. Now, New Yorker's Jane Mayer explains, look, this isn't just about going after these specific people, whether it's James Rosen or Julian Assange or whoever might have broken a real story. She explains it's a huge impediment to reporting. And so chilling isn't quite strong enough. It's more like freezing the whole process into a standstill. And Glenn comes back and points out, look, that of course is precisely the point of the unprecedented Obama war on whistleblowers and press freedoms, to ensure that the only information the public can get is information that the Obama administration wants it to have. That's why Obama's one-side games with secrecy will prolifically leak when it glorifies the president and severely punish all other kinds. Is designed to construct the classic propaganda model. That is unfortunately entirely correct. And the entire spectrum, Glenn Greenwald, who is very progressive, all the way to Fox News, who's very conservative, all agree, and everyone and everyone in between as well, New York Times, Washington Post, etc. Now let's show you Fox News, who makes the same point.
There is a double standard. I don't know if you picked that up at home, if you've been following the world or the U.S. policy. This administration knows that there was a major leak last June where Senator McCain says, why don't we find out who's leaking from the administration? Because David Sanger wrote a book talking about how we put a Stuxnet virus in Iranian, in a cyber attack on Iranian computers.
But Brian, that made us look good.
But yeah, that also how the President of the United States personally checks off a kill list before a drone strike at a would-be terrorist cell.
That makes him look tough.
Right, so David Sanger gets away with both those things.
You know the old saying about a broken clock, right? Well, look, just because it's on Fox News doesn't mean it's not true. The world is upside down. I'm actually agreeing with Brian Kilmeade. He's right. That's exactly what the Bush administration used to do too, by the way, of course, which they didn't mention there. But the Obama administration does as well. If something makes us look good, we leak it. And by the way, talk about the world being upside down. having a kill list is now a positive thing. It makes you look tough. Oh yeah, those are the people I killed outside of the law. Aren't I awesome? And Fox is like, well, that is pretty awesome. You got to give them that. So that's why they leaked that positive leak. But it's not just Fox News saying it. Go back to the Washington Post now. I'm sorry, New York Times first. The Obama administration has moved beyond protecting government secrets to threatening fundamental freedoms of the press to gather news. Dana Milbank at the Washington Post. The Rosen affair is as flagrant an assault on civil liberties as anything done by George W. Bush's administration, and it uses technology to silence critics in a way Richard Nixon could only have dreamed of. Then Eugene Robinson comes in from the Washington Post. If this had been the view of prior administrations, surely Bob Woodward would be a lifer in some federal prison. The cell next door might be occupied by my Post colleague Dana Priest, who disclosed the CIA's network of secret prisons, or by the New York Times' James Risen and Eric Lichtblau, who revealed the National Security Agency's eavesdropping program. Rosen has not been charged. Every investigative reporter, however, has been put on notice. All these different people across the spectrum don't agree because it's wrong. They agree because it's right. The Obama administration has an unprecedented attack on journalism.